We now have the regular update from Auckland Transport. Oh, B, is that recorded? We've covered that off. And I just want to foreshadow, at the conclusion of this item, we will be taking a 5-minute break. But welcome Dean Kimpton, Stacey Van Putten, and here we all are. Oh my goodness, what a month of activity we're all having. How nice it is to have you here.
And it's awesome to be here, but you know that. We always enjoy it, so thank you very much, committee. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things if I can, and then reflect on 2023. I will take the CE's report as read, and we will also pick up on where we're at with renewals and maintenance and katoa ka ora. But if I can just touch on a few things. There was a good discussion with this morning with the committee just around safety outcomes, community wellbeing. What I recommend we bring into you, and a number of you have seen it already, is that we have a tool called Future Connect. We also have another tool that provides crash data analytics for anywhere across our road network. Future Connect allows us to understand our network and how that network will grow, and it overlays it with equity outcomes. We can see demographics, we can understand social issues, climate issues, access issues. So if we want to truly understand community outcomes, let alone transport outcomes, we have the tool, we will share that with you. Similarly, we have the crash analytics database. There's a lot of discussion on safety component of wellbeing being the broader topic. We have a very sophisticated tool with a lot of input into that. So I can assure you that all the questions you've got, we will be able to provide you further insight. And I dare to suggest that one of your councillor colleagues, being Maurice Williamson, was equally impressed by those tools. Shame he's not here to confirm it, but he was, as you know, with councillor, he loves technology, and he was impressed with those. So
he's online.
Councillor Williamson, I'm sure that you will confirm the same. Katoa ka ora, I know that is a paper before you this afternoon. Can I just...
I so confirm.
Thank you, I'm pleased to hear that. Have you used your gold card yet though, councillor?
No, they wouldn't accept it in Hamilton.
Oh, okay, well... sorry, this is
we digress.
I think we're bringing some joy, okay? Katoa ka ora, I know there's been some interest and discussion around what that paper is. Stacey will talk to it more specifically. This paper is a noting paper. We're not asking you to make decisions. You're not approving katoa ka ora. That's actually the responsibility of the Road Controlling Authority. What we did want you to do was just to understand what the feedback was from the communities around how they saw speed, and you've got that in the form of that document. So there's a number of recommendations in here. You will see them. There is one approval in relation to Kariotahi Beach. That is your road. That's why we're asking you to approve. Outside of that, you might want to change Clause D from support finalisation to note finalisation, but nothing will change until we have got feedback from the new government on what their intentions are around the law. I don't know whether I can be any more specific, but we're not looking for approval, and we're not looking for any further recommendations. I mentioned the word joy before, but I want to take a moment out to acknowledge Auckland Transport. I've been in the role 7 months, which is not long really, but it does feel like a long time just the same. I'm not going to compare myself. But having said that, I've been around the staff over the last 2 weeks, and I've shared with them what I'm proud about, and I want to share the same with you. So bear with me for a minute. As I think over 2023, that organisation has dealt with Auckland's largest ever floods, then again in May. We have supported an outstanding response to the FIFA Women's World Cup. We have dealt with a shooting at the Britomart station and stabbings at Albany. That team and the organisation has done an amazing job of responding to more challenges than I would suggest pretty much any other organisation in New Zealand. We've also managed at the same time a significant challenge around reducing cost. That resulted sadly in 146 people leaving our employment, alongside the other operational cuts that we made to the tune of 35 million. We've also put 595 bus drivers back into the business of delivering bus services alongside of rescheduling and delivery of those services. They are all back, and generally speaking, they're on time, they're reliable, and they're where we expect them to be. We delivered 95% of our capital budget in the last 12 months, and we delivered within our operating budget. Interestingly enough, when we compare our capital delivery with our partners against what's otherwise known as the ATAP budgets, so this number will be slightly different, we delivered 90%. At the same time, Waka Kotahi delivered 71% over the last 2 years, and CRL delivered 86%. So you've got an organisation that knows how to deliver capital programs, and they've got the proof and the statistics over the last 2 years. We delivered the Western Express service alongside our partners, Waka Kotahi. We've dealt with the flood recovery, and we've changed fundamentally our organisation. At the same time, just to be sure that we know that all of this hasn't been happening without feedback from our customers. Our customers have told us, to the tune of a 20-point increase, that they are more satisfied today than they were 3 months ago. Our customers have told us, and the people that we survey in the community have told us, that they believe we hear them and they trust us to put that understanding into effect, and that's a 10% increase. And our turnover at the staff level has gone down from just under 23% to just over 16%. So when I tell staff I'm proud of what they've achieved, I want you to hear exactly the same. I can't think of many organisations, including the Deloitte Top 200 last night, that would have done better. So I want it on the record, and I want it on YouTube. As I come to the CE's report, there is a range of topics in there. I will take that as read. I'm happy to take any questions because I know that you want to get to the rest of your day. I've asked Murray to spend a little bit of time just telling you where we're at with renewals and maintenance. We're grateful for your support on that, and then we'll go to katoa ka ora. But first of all, any questions on the CE's report?
Open for questions. Mayor Brown, do you
Is that
wish
on
to...
YouTube? Thank you.
It would appear we have no questions of the CE at this time. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. You'll be aware that a competitor has began services on the Waiheke Run. That competitor at this stage is extremely disadvantaged, and I do hope that Auckland Transport will enable the access to the same benefits to Island Direct as the lavish benefits that go to Fuller's. But I was travelling on the Island Direct ferry last night, and one of the passengers told me that when the ferry, the 8:15 ferry from Waiheke, arrived at its berth on Pier 13, which is way over towards Princess Wharf, a Fuller's vessel was on the berth. That vessel did not leave the berth until the Fuller's 8:30 ferry arrived arrived and disembarked, and then the Fullers on Pier 12, and then the Fuller's Ferry departed from, Pier 10, I think it was anyway. Then the Fuller's Ferry departed from the Island Direct berth. Now, that may have been an accident, but those people were kept on their boat, unable to get ashore because Fuller's was even not only dominating all the main piers, but actually stuck one of its boats at peak time on the Island Direct berth. And I would be expecting AT to step in and watch for anti-competitive behaviour, which Fuller's have exhibited in the past. So I make that plea. Can I get a response, please?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm aware of that issue in terms of the departure and the crossover in terms of that pier use. So there are a couple of piers there that are dedicated for commercial operators and commercial operations, and there is an agreement in term of use that wasn't followed for that particular instance, and our team are working through that with the operators. As far as Island Direct goes, we are working very closely with them in order to make sure that their service is successful. And actually, there was a query after our board last week, so I am compiling some information on that and we'll be happy to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The speaking order I have for the questions are Councillor Hills, Councillor Newman, Councillor Ferry and the Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to get into detailed questions, but on a high level, we have change of government, potential change of GPS. We've got the Mayor's proposal, we've got the RLTP, we've got the RPTP, and probably a bunch of other things. How can we help you, or how are you going to help us keep all that together, keep delivery going, but also help Aucklanders understand what's happening? Because I'm a bit worried that multiple decisions that won't match are going to continue to come our way, your way. Do you see a way forward to make sense of all that in the next 6 or so months?
Yes and no, Councillor Hills. The focus of the organisation is to deliver what it's currently contracted to deliver, and without getting distracted with the politics of change in its many and various forms. So organisationally, we know what we need to do, and we're deeply focused on that. We know that there are some moving parts, and you've mentioned those, the GPS, and we've got our own long-term plan. I feel like we're making good progress in the long-term plan, so we're increasing certainty around the contracts we strike and the services that we deliver. We also know that there'll be some change through the coalition government. But 95% of what we do still needs to be done, and that's the message to staff, and I think that's my message to Aucklanders as well. When it becomes clear on what the exact positions are, and those could be significant transport investments, or it might be a funding arrangement around public transport or renewals, and we've got concerns around that, and so we will be advocating, then we will have to look to adjust, and we'll bring that back into this committee after we've taken it through the board. So I think it's a case of watch the space. Where we are very aligned with Auckland Council, and we've advocated strongly with the coalition government, is that unless we take a Transport for Auckland outcomes perspective, we will end up overcomplicating our ability to both govern and deliver. So we're very committed to the Integrated Auckland Transport Plan. We're very committed to ensuring that the governance that supports that is in place, and we've got agreement politically and then at the executive level. We want to see this government get alignment around how that is funded and delivered, whether it's a service, renewals, new capital, and simplify that funding. So those are our messages to the political leadership. I think they're aligned with what I've heard from the Mayor's office and this chamber. So if we can do that, then I think the rest will shake down. But otherwise, we've got a lot to get on with.
And very quick question, because I ask it all the time, how are you tracking with bringing those siloed budgets together, intersection improvements, cycling, etc., with a renewal, because I've given you another big example of an arterial in our community, which has been on the books for 3 years, but it just hasn't been pulled together. How can we try going forward to save money and save time, save TMP, instead of doing 3 projects in over 3 years, etc.?
So the delightful thing about these questions is you can have an awesome year, but there's always things you need to improve at, and this would be an example, and we're quite open about that. Part of the organisational change is to shift the way that we think about corridors and what we're trying to achieve in those corridors into the one group, and that's now called infrastructure and place. My expectation is they're not just thinking about the renewals activity, but they're thinking about what the betterment might be and the operational performance of that corridor. So they're bringing those things together to bear on decision making. So we don't do a renewals this season and then we suddenly put a bus lane in the next season, and then we might do a third thing after that. So expectation is that we bring those together, and if we've got a funding question, is it a renewals budget or is it a betterment budget? In my world, we've got 2 buckets of money, we'll bring them together to give the most cost-effective outcome. That's the expectation, but sometimes we miss it, and I'm always grateful for those that can spot the gap, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newman.
Hi, Dean and team. Dean, elections do have consequences, but what I'm curious to know is the extent to which, if Auckland Transport has been invited informally or formally to provide advice to the Ministry of Transport, as the Ministry of Transport provides its initial thinking to the incoming government, and then obviously now starting to respond to what will be the new government's expectations around the GPS, because you will have a better understanding of the transport network in Auckland than any other transport agency. But sometimes you will not be at the front of the queue when it comes to providing the professional information that will inform decisions in relation to that.
So I think that's one of the challenges that we need to address through how transport outcomes are governed in Auckland, which is one of the root causes of the voice of Auckland not being at the table when it relates to Auckland issues. But I can confirm that informally I'm discussing transport outcomes for Auckland with the Ministry of Transport with a view to influencing GPS.
Can I ask, was that input informally, if it may be, assisting the Ministry of Transport with the preparation of the BIM to the incoming minister, the briefing to the incoming minister?
Well, those conversations with the Ministry of Transport, the same way we do with Waka Kotahi, have been ongoing. So how they've used that information, I couldn't comment as to whether it's directly inputted into the BIM or not. But those conversations have been ongoing over the last several months.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. My question follows on a little bit from Councillor Hill's in terms of some of the joined up stuff. And one of the things that I'm seeing in the comms space, and the example here is going to be Meola Road, is that we use road closed signs when actually they're only closed for some forms, some modes. And so there's confusion in the community about actually, yeah, we can still walk along there, we can still ride a bike or whatever. And it also means that when something is closed and you can't walk along it, people don't take that message because there's an inconsistency. So, there's been a lot of stuff on social media about people saying, no, Meola Road, you can still bike and cycle along it, but it's been great. The community's kind of corrected themselves, right? So that's a good example. But there'll be lots of spaces where that's not going to happen. So what are we thinking about in that space where we are doing, a renewal project or some other kind of project and it's closed for a particular mode but not necessarily for all modes? Are we thinking more about the comms?
We're thinking a lot about the communications, both in advance and during any of our construction projects, including renewals and maintenance. But it's a good point. We can take that on board. I'll reflect that through to the team. That it could be closed for one mode, but still available for walking and cycling. We'll make, if that's an issue, we'll make it clearer. Thank you.
Thanks, and just a punt for closed all modes as well, when it is closed for all modes, because I think people do get confused and there's a safety issue. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. Dean, thanks for a good report. I've just got a couple of questions. What do you think has driven the motorcyclist fatalities from 2 in the previous year to 16 in the past 12 months?
Yeah, I'll tackle that. Good question. And actually, I did have a slide, and I'm not sure it made the cut in terms of the motorcyclist snapshot, because there was some good information there, so I will share it in terms of that, because we did do a bit of a dive into it to understand it further. I think the predominant cause is what we saw coming out of COVID, particularly in 2021, was a huge increase in motorcycle registrations. And so it was noticeable. And so more new motorcycles on the road, or motorcyclists on the road. And with that, that trend has continued. So I'll suggest, in terms of obviously economic use, in terms of mode choice, that is a key denominator. So people looking to get around more efficiently. Obviously the roads were really light during COVID. Coming out of that, you get back to that congestion and people notice it and then just decide which mean of travel they're going to use. So the big increase in motorcyclists across New Zealand, but obviously more central to Auckland. So when we sort of look at the data there, you can see that most of the events are actually happening in the urban areas in terms of that. And a lot of them are what we call, when you look into the types of events that are happening, are turning. So that would suggest motorcyclists turning into traffic and potentially oncoming traffic, not seeing them in terms of that. You break it sort of down further, it is, when you look at what I would call another layer of data from that, you can see that it's predominantly men. I'm sure that's probably not a surprise in terms of that, but particularly 17 to 29-year-olds. It's actually that they are obviously disproportionate in that sort of data, and it's 95% in terms of male with that. So it is a real concerning trend that we've seen, particularly in Auckland. It is out of what I'd say kilter with the rest of the country in terms of the patterns we're seeing.
We might be able to do some help with some maybe social media awareness around that if it's it doesn't cost anything and it might help. My second question is around DSI, because one DSI is one too many. But I am interested to see that Albert Eden has doubled their DSIs. So I was kind of, and you've got Papakura have gone from 19 to 31 and Waitemata from 13 to 21. Is there anything, especially on Albert Eden, is it attributed to anything special?
Not particularly. And so, look, motorcyclists has obviously instigated more in some of those what I would call urban areas that you probably potentially didn't see before in terms of that as well. So it does change, right? And we see throughout the year that particular areas do spike up, and it's a rolling picture. So they do change as you sort of go through particular trends in that area. No, there's nothing that I can sort of point to that would distinguish that.
Just in the areas, the local board areas that have had fatalities, do you go and talk to the local boards, and do they have the information as to the reason, you know, whether it is, you know, a real accident, for want of a better word, or something that could have been prevented? Do you actually drill down and give them that information?
We do have that information available, and so we have built really good data sets to enable better understanding of how these things are happening and when they're happening and where in terms of that. We would suggest, in order to understand that data and understand the picture, that it's best presented by one of the team who can help explain it, because it can be sort of quite overwhelming in terms of information. We don't share the likes of the full reports with everybody, no.
Finally, Chair, thank you. I won't need to speak later, but I just want to thank you for the good things. and I hope you manage to take a bit of a break over the summer, although I do note that you're doing a lot of work over the summer, especially in our road corridors, so thank you.
I think that concludes all of the questions that I've had, unless there are any online. So I will join with Deputy Mayor in saying thank you very much and wishing you all the best for the festive season. And is there anything, before you leave us, any parting comments?
So what I would like to do, sorry, I broke this into two sections, or three as it may be, but just to talk about the general siege report. But I did think it was useful for Murray, if he can work it into 5 minutes, just to talk about where we're at with the renewals program and the public campaign that's supporting that, because we want Aucklanders to know that we're out fixing the roads. And they will see.
By all means, do.
So a brief overview of that. Is that okay, Murray? In your hands, you've got 5 minutes. Yeah. Just go straight through it, straight to... Can we get the presentation back up? Good, it's tall. Thank you.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Murray Burt, the Chief Engineer at Auckland Transport. Just very briefly, a lot of work going on out on the road network. We had 2,000 sites impacted by storm damage, and over the past 9 months we've fixed up 1,500 of those, so 75% of the way. Still another 500 to go, and they're the more complex ones, so it will take some time. But fantastic progress, and you can see in the report some of the good work that's done. That's Glenvar Road, opened up recently, some work up in Peremarama Road, and this is Tahikiroa Road, which was also the rail line impacted as well as the road. But I think the key point here is that we really want to say thank you to this council and governing body for the support in terms of renewals funding and the long-term plan, and the recognition that fixing the roads and looking after what we have is really important for the city. And so, yeah, thanks for your support in that. A lot of good work was done in terms of analysis of what is a right-sized renewals budget, and it's great to get the support from this council to that end. However, one challenge remains, and that is that renewals funding is funded 50% by council and 50% by central government. And so it's important that we continue to apply pressure that the central government will come to the party and fund their 51%. But we're not waiting around. We're getting on and doing the work. And over the summer, we'll be continuing to work on those 500 flood recovery sites, together with 400 kilometres of road resurfacing and rehabilitation, 60 kilometres of footpath renewals, and 40 kilometres of stormwater channel renewals. So a lot of work going on over the summer, and there will be a campaign that you'll start to see in the media, the fact that we are doing work, but also to respect our frontline workers. And road workers do receive a lot of abuse when they're out there on the network doing their job for the people of Auckland, fixing those potholes. So part of the messaging is that we need to respect our frontline workers so that the work can be done, and to drive safely through roadwork sites this summer. The other point I'll just highlight is that in that area of key risk of funding from the side of the National Land Transport Fund, early indications from Waka Kotahi is that they may only be able to come up with 60 to 70% of what they're required to fund. And so now's the time for advocacy at that political level to make sure that the government understands how important this is for Auckland, and that they come up with their share of the funding to support what's been supported by Auckland Council itself. So I'll maybe leave it there and open up for any questions.
And you are under 5 minutes. Peter?
Can you share the stuff with us so we can help promote it for you, the campaign?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got tiles or something we can help share? You know, we're all sort of heading to the end of the year and summer holidays, so final messages, whatever
We
you
will,
want to give us.
we will get it to you, and you can hear it on the radio now too, but we'll give you all the links that you need to put it in whatever social media platform.
Cool,
Done.
thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Murray. The reason behind the Waka Kotahi 60% is that because they're now having to channel more of their funding into playing catch up on the maintenance on their roads? Just trying to get it right for when we do advocate to politicians that we've got the right reason as to what we're potentially accusing Waka Kotahi of doing.
The primary reason is that the National Land Transport Fund doesn't have enough money in the pot. But how it seems to be shaping up is that Waka Kotahi has a requirement for renewals just the same as all the other road controlling authorities. They're aiming to do 10% resurfacing and 1% rehabilitation, so that's looking at the pavements. What then remains for the rest of the country is not sufficient to meet the requirements. So it looks like we might only be able to target around 5 to 6% resurfacing and 0.1 or 0.2% rehabilitation, which is less than what we had planned for. And so that the target would be that there needs to be more money in the pot to cover off the local share portion for local roads.
Thanks, mate. So pretty good lesson there about sweating your assets.
Yep.
Councillor Walker.
Sure, thanks, Chair. Would it be possible, not necessarily right now, but at a later meeting, to get some feedback on the initiatives you're putting in place to reduce the cost of some of the things around cones and the perhaps some of the road safety stuff being done more efficiently? And I'm referring to exercises where there's works in the road space, and my personal observation that there are often changes that could be made in the planning of those works and the organisation to both reduce congestion, make the work more efficient, and also save money.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Yes, we will, and we do quite regularly through this committee give you updates. Temporary traffic management is a significant focus, and we've got the right sort of things occurring there, but they do take time to get the change. Secondly, there are innovations in construction that you'll hear more about. Murray and I were talking about today one recent example. If we're talking safety infrastructure, speed tables can be precast and placed in, done overnight, which means that you reduce all the other associated costs, including temporary traffic management. So there's a lot of innovation that can occur, and we will continue to strongly encourage that.
We welcome that. Councillor Newman.
Sounds like marvellous feedback.
Thank you. Thanks for the great presentation, Murray. The NZTA going at 10 and 1 and us going at 6 on less than 1. Have NZTA given any indication to you that they accept the premise that if you're going to do these renewal works in one part of the network, you really have to do the network? Do they accept that? And if so, do they say, is their view that, well, we accept it, well, we just can't fund you? Or do they say, well, we accept that and we have to figure out a way in which we can persuade the GPS to ensure that we can fund you?
So we submit our asset management plan and analysis to Waka Kotahi, and the general feedback last time and this time as well is it's a well thought through asset management plan. and the requirement to do the work is definitely justified up to 8 to 10% of the road to be resurfaced and 1% rehabs. But the fundamental issue is there's not enough money in the National Land Transport Fund to support funding that fully. So there can be advocacy towards the Ministry of Transport. Obviously, Waka Kotahi is limited by what it has in its pot. And as you say, there can be reprioritisation across the GPS. But I think that that's a point for advocacy as we have a new government coming in and forming opinions.
Councillor Hills. Oh, sorry.
Chair, I think that what is just that exchange is so important for that particular. I mean, if NZTA accept the premise that the asset management plan is a well thought through document, then the only thing that's standing in the way, obviously, is money, which is the thing that we all don't have. But if the regional fuel tax and the other National Land Transport Fund revenue is going to be hotly contested, then that particular point is the one thing that government, I don't think, can ignore, because the asset management plan justifies it. So I'd like to see what NZTA has written back to you formally, because that's the sort of stuff that would absolutely need to go to government if you were to hit anything close to 10%, which you'll struggle with at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick questions. One, is there anything we can do about not receiving state highways, at this time, maybe part of the city deal or part of, we're obviously going to receive the one up north soon because of the new motorway, but is there anything we can do there? Because we are receiving that asset and it's all its future OPEX. Do we have to, or can it just be called a different state highway?
So we're going through the process, rightly as you point out, to receive State Highway 1 as an asset for Auckland City, given that the new motorway has opened. There is a process that we go through to ensure that the asset, when we receive it, is fit for purpose as a local road. I would have to check, but my understanding is that we don't have an option to not receive the asset.
Okay.
But it's something I can definitely look at more explicitly.
The other question on, thank you. The other question on roads, is there a discussion, and yes, it is political, but although all governments put new roads and highways in, but is there a discussion around the fact that we've got dropping maintenance and renewals budgets, but plans to build a lot more roads and highways? Is there a discussion around the fact we're just increasing constantly the surface area of what needs to be done? Is there a bit of push-pull here, or is that too political really for the organisation?
Oh, it's definitely not too political. There's definitely a ongoing and quite pointed discussion around adding new significant infrastructure without a commensurate form of funding the renewals and maintenance of it. It is our single biggest challenge. As I think about the current capital program that you've approved, circa 14 to 16 billion, wherever that lands up over the next 10 years, not inside of that is several other billions of dollars of work that needs to be done just to complete CRL, to get the bus interchanges and the railway stations up and running as you would expect, so people can actually interact with the new infrastructure safely. We've got billions to spend just to leverage what we've already committed to building, let alone the other things that we need to build. So it is absolutely part of the conversation, as is how we optimise the existing. And we need to be very thoughtful about it.
Thank you. The last question, thank you, Madam Chair. We talk about the storms and the floods as having that huge several $100 million effect on our infrastructure, but is there anything being done, speaking to a few of the road workers, filling potholes and fixing them on the shore, there there's a very clear pattern of the last 2 years, the ability, A, to do anything because it's raining, and B, the fact that it's broken, damaged a week later because of the rain. And I've seen some really good videos from other cities around the world showing why there's A, more potholes, and B, less days to fix them. Are we doing work on that? Like, not just talking about the extreme weather event, but the fact you have almost double the average rain, which ruins the road but doesn't give us the time to fix it.
Yeah, sure. So in response to that, you're absolutely right that water is the one element that causes the most damage to roads, and we've had a lot of it in the past year. And if my colleague Alan Wallace was here, he would say the key way that you protect the road, just like a coat of paint on your house, is to resurface at the right frequency. And that's been one of the problems with a constrained renewals budget. We haven't been able to provide that waterproofing surface on top of the roads that we should do. And the cost of that resurfacing is relatively cheap. We're talking somewhere between $10 and $20 a square metre. However, if the water then gets into the road and starts to damage it, like what you're talking about, potholes, and gets into the pavement, you're then talking about $200 to $400 a square metre to actually rebuild that pavement. So the most important thing you can do is resurface frequently and get the waterproofing layer on. After that, it's looking at other types of innovations and materials that you can actually extend the season when it's raining and do works during wet weather, which is possible, but those are more expensive treatments than what we've commonly used in New Zealand. Thanks.
And sorry, Madam Chair, that's led to another question, and that's really helpful. I had been told it was largely lack of days, but if you're saying lack of money and we're only doing between 1% and 3% of road renewals a year, how will we ever get to the billions needed per year to get up to a level where the rain is not going to get in? Because you're talking about a transformational way of changing the funding proposition. You're talking about 10 times the funding needed.
Yeah, in response to that, it's not as extreme as what you might imagine. So currently, across New Zealand, the gap between what local authorities need for adequate asset management and what's available over the next 3 years is only $1 billion. And so that's only 350 million a year that would need to be added into the Land Transport Fund in order for Auckland to deliver on its asset management plan. So if we can get that money and apply it to the very cheap, or relatively cheap solution of waterproofing the roads, then we'll be able to protect our assets and make them last much longer.
There you go, Matt.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, just in regard to deep understanding, I think there's a mutual obligation. The council has a major financial challenge, which is systemic. I think AT needs to acknowledge that it has a role in meeting this challenge. When we read about construction costs being 3 to 4 times that of Australia, that the CRL is the most expensive rail tunnel in the world by far, that it costs the same as a house to build a pedestrian crossing or raised pedestrian crossing. Do you agree that there is a challenge that AT needs to face up to in extracting better value for money and rigour in its procurement contracts?
I can respond to that. So absolutely, we're looking at all options to deliver better, faster and cheaper. And there's a range of angles that we can approach this, more pragmatic designs, different contractual mechanisms for delivery. And absolutely, we're taking on that challenge to see where there's ways where we can deliver better, faster and cheaper.
Thank you, Mr. Burt.
Can I just add, Murray, the other thing we need to do, and we are doing, is advocate with central government and with our other transport agencies in Auckland for a pragmatic pipeline of work. So one of the issues you'll have heard Dr. Sean Sweeney speak to when talking about City Rail Link is we do these massive projects in one-offs, and in this case we do 2 big tunnelling projects at the same time, and then it'll be another 10 or 20 years before we do the next one. And when you mobilise, you build, you demobilise, and then you wait and plan, and then you do it again, there's a doubling inside of that in itself. So I think we can be a lot smarter in the way we plan and deliver. And then you have innovation within the system that allows you to do it more cost effectively. So Auckland Transport has a number of roles and we're totally up for it.
Do you think that there's a possibility that not only is the wider public sector, but including the Auckland Council family, that there are so many contracts going out there that there is a danger that we've kind of competing with ourselves to a highly controlled construction market and driving up the price almost inadvertently?
I don't see anything untoward there. I just think in some cases it's just lack of planning about how we sequence things into the market. And we own that as the client and the funder. And that's not Auckland Transport alone, it's Auckland Council, it's Auckland Transport, it's Watercare, it's Waka Kotahi. How do we think about the delivery of infrastructure in Auckland in a way that allow that infrastructure to be delivered cost effectively and efficiently? And to me that's one of the great opportunities, is for us to take an integrated approach to delivering transport outcomes in Auckland rather than the current fragmented approach.
Thank you, I agree with that. Thanks very much.
My apologies. I guess what I came to the conclusion in that exchange is hence the need for an integrated transport plan, that we all know where we're going. And in terms of knowing where she's going, the chair was a little premature in wishing you well with the festive season. Is there anything else that you wish to cover now?
Nothing from me, except if I can just acknowledge Mark Lambert, who finishes next Friday after a long, significant career within Auckland Transport and delivering transport outcomes for Auckland. We might be able to get him back to help us out in a few things, but having said that, he has resigned, and I wanted to wish him publicly all the best with his next steps.
Oh, thank you for drawing our attention to that. I've had a great pleasure in working with Mark on the board of Auckland Transport, and then as a councillor, he's made an outstanding contribution to Auckland, and I, for one, am very sad to see him going. So, members, if you'd like to join with me, we can acknowledge him. I don't think he's in the room, is he? No. We can acknowledge him in the appropriate way. Thank you, Mark, for that. Thank you, officers. We'll ask you to step away while we consider your report. Councillor Baker, you're moving the report. Do I have a seconder for the report? Deputy Mayor, discussion on the report. I will put it. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary say no. The matter is carried. As I foreshadowed, we will be taking a 5-minute break.
Aye.